Excellent. So welcome everybody. Today we've got Dave Nezzie, and I intentionally don't do much of an introduction for these, because I really want the interview to be about the process of having a career rather than sort of the accolades and the destination. Um, so we are going to learn together what Dave's journey has been and how he's gotten to where he is and where and what he does in what he does. Um, so with that, thanks so much for being here, Dave. And in your own words, what is your background?
Thanks, Eva, for having me here to share more about my personal journey. And well, to begin, it's customary to introduce myself in the Dene way. I'm Maidish Gijni in Shle, Oze Bashichin, Twitch Inidashanale, Tlezathlandashiche, Nile Beik Idabat Hotzane, Denasha. Which identifies my clans um, and my lineage through the Navajo tribe. And so my grandparents were ranchers, raising sheep out on the Navajo reservation, as well as cattle and horses. And that was probably my first exposure to agriculture and grew up around that. Um, I was raised in Snowflake, Arizona, which is off the reservation. And so I had this part-time on the res and part-time off the res childhood. And, I guess at the time, I didn't really appreciate what my grandparents were doing until later in life when I started working on the Gila River Indian community where I found myself working in hospitality at one of Arizona's most premier restaurants, which is called Kai. And the restaurant is located on the res in Phoenix. So it features Native American cuisine. And the tribe there is an agrarian society. And so the chef had integrated a lot of traditional foods that were incorporated into the menu, like tepary beans, cholla buds from the cholla cactus, saguaro blossom syrup from the saguaro cactus, and then also partnered with other tribal nations and featured their ingredients into the menu as well. So we had bison from the Cheyenne River Sioux, quinault salmon, Red Lake wild rice, and so it was a beautiful, composition of flavors that were all native ingredients. And during my time there, the tribe had um, settled a 100-year litigation for their water rights back in 2004. And the community was so moved and inspired by that accomplishment that it inspired me, of like wanting to be part of something this of this magnitude that um, helps people connect back to their traditional ways. For the community here, it was farming and securing those water rights. And so I had this mix of like traditional foods, justice that was occurring, food sovereignty, and then that's where like my like realizing, hey, you know what, my grandparents and all the things that they taught me and my ancestors who had done this, has always been centered around, agriculture. And so wanted to pursue a career down that path. And after graduating with an undergrad at ASU, I studied in American Indian Studies as well as anthropology. I applied to UNM School of Law and then moved to Albuquerque and studied there for 3 years, focusing on Indian law as well as natural resources and environmental law. And then during my third year of studies, we had a visiting professor from the University of Arkansas who came out and talked about tribal food sovereignty. And so here was an opportunity again where I thought, I would love to do this. And that professor was Janie Hip. who was the former general counsel for USDA just this during the last administration. And so pursued, an LLM at the University of Arkansas in this area of agricultural policy. After that, I started my policy career working for Martin Heinrich. I was a field representative for him, based in his Santa Fe office, and I worked primarily in northern New Mexico, working on the Navajo Nation as well as the northeast corner of the state as well in Quay County, um, Harding County, up in Clayton area as well, and and really start to understand how the sausage is being made and how Congress operates and works, and had that deep and had a deeper exposure to grassroots building and community organizing. So after that, I think it kind of relates into maybe another question that might be coming down the pike, but I moved into philanthropy right after that, working for the Thornburg Foundation, which is based in Santa Fe. And at Thornburg Foundation, we focused on developing policies that would improve systems. And I was focusing on agricultural food systems. And so trying to find a way to make our policies work for our producers. And then now I transitioned over from the Thornburg Foundation into the Waverly Street Foundation, which is a climate funder, but focusing their efforts on community solutions for our climate, right? And we're doing that through regenerative agriculture as well as renewable energy. And so bringing sort of all those experiences, working with tribes, understanding my roots, and working with community grassroots organizations again, and now developing a new strategy on how can we again build upon um, how can we use regenerative agriculture in a way to help solve some of our climate challenges that we're all facing.
That's awesome. So it sounds like um, you've had connections in like sort of your background and experience. You were connected to rural traditional tribal communities. You were also like at ASU. You were also at a fancy resort, but that was rooted in indigenous landways and foodways, which is making me hungry thinking about saguaro syrup. And then sort of pursuing interests of the policy thing, going to law and then to philanthropy. And so I feel like that's a really good example of how students can start in one direction and then you can shape where you want to go. It sounds like you didn't sort of you got to shape your own trajectory so far.
Absolutely. And I think when you see opportunities, right, that open up, those paths are there, oftentimes for a reason.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, all right. So this one is everyone in agriculture seems to wear many hats. What are some of the things that you do professionally related to agriculture?
Yeah, I think the first thing I think about is policy development, which can occur in several ways, but the way that I'm more familiar with is again looking at what a community is wanting and needing, right? And that community organization to put forth recommendations on actions that need to occur in order to make them more efficient and more in finding those solutions. So there's a bit of the policy development. I was thinking about like movement building as well. I think philanthropy also has that role too to help um, make those occur. A capacity building, right? We're looking in some of these rural areas, so trying to figure out ways on how to, increase the human capacity, the skills within particular organizations. I also think that there's, of course, the climate crisis that's occurring. So thinking about um, Again, how do we find solutions through agriculture to address climate, looking at regenerative ag and what healthy soils as, a benefit to not only the earth but also to us as consumers and to our relatives and to the ecosystem. And then the what's interesting about this foundation is that because we have that nexus with energy development, there's also that piece where I feel like I put my hat on too when we talk about energy projects and considering, well, how does this impact you know of agricultural producer? How does it benefit them, right? And so looking at ways of how we can create those diversified streams of income for sometimes for producers. So looking at that, looking at how we can maybe explore agrivoltaics as an opportunity, right? And, especially when you have fields that have gone fallow. And so just thinking about again, how do we build something that's sustainable using both of these tactics?
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's sort of like my premise has always been like anything you're interested in can apply to agriculture, but it sounds like you can also take it the other way, that you can take any relationship or knowledge about agriculture and use that to connect to other things. Like that's really interesting. And then it also sounds like your role is really about people, right? Like there are some people in agriculture who are very focused on livestock or who are very focused on crop development or something like that. And that there's also an opportunity to be focused on community development and capacity building at that sort of human scale.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it has to come from the community, and the community wants and desires to make it happen, right? You have these, so then they're advocates for themselves, so that way it's not a top-down approach, right? It's really something that's desiring that they're wanting to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. Which maybe is getting to the very next question, which is what motivates you in your work and how does your work align with your interests and values?
Well, the big thing that motivates me for my work is the potential to bring change to our communities. And in the communities, in New Mexico, right, I think about our tribal, I think about our rural New Mexico, right, these underserved and marginalized areas that um, need the support. So certainly motivated to do the work that supports them and their goals. And for some of the values, like I think that comes from growing up in a small town, um, and and also being a minority in a small town. Um, so just understanding like the looking for a sense of justice, right? That needs to occur. Environmental, social justice as these things move forward. And and then what also motivates me too is, how we think about the future for our youth and the next generation that comes behind us. Like sort of what what do we want them to inherit, right? What do we want to provide them with? And so working towards again those solutions that hopefully make it easier for them as they go through their lives.
Yeah, it sounds like it's really having a longer view than sort of personal edification, that your work is part of something much bigger and multi-generational.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How did you get your position?
Well, kind of going on the path that I shared earlier, there's different trajectories, but philanthropy was a place where I didn't really like think that philanthropy was like a career that I would get into. Even after, studying law, I didn't think that's what would be an option. And but when I was working as the field representative for Senator Heinrich, I got a call from the executive director at Thornburg, and said, and basically it just shared the job posting and saying, we could really use somebody who has some expertise in your area to help with, our strategy development. And that's kind of the same thing that happened with Waverly Street. Is I just got a call and a request, and felt like it was the right alignment for me to do, and to really again come back and help bring some of that change for communities and help facilitate that grant making that can strengthen our communities. And so yeah, so it was a mix of just, career growth and yeah, just working in communities.
Yeah, I think it's especially when you're starting out as a student, it's sort of hard to fathom that someone would like seek you out when you're brand new. But it just goes to show when you really invest and you sort of get get a reputation that sometimes the opportunities will seek you out rather than you having to sort of find your way. So it sounds like all of the groundwork and all of the investment you put in uh, led to some really cool opportunities that you weren't expecting, right? Like in law school, you were doing policy work, but in a sort of a different way than you might be doing now, but that those skills are very overlapping.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think and for philanthropy too, I think maybe it's a bit of how they also operate, right, is by like invitation sometimes. And so that's kind of an interesting piece as well.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that is yeah. I mean, a longer conversation, right? Like we are intentionally talking about careers rather than sort of fields. But yes, thinking about how philanthropy works could be a whole other conversation. Um, nice. Anything? So that was sort of the end of my like the heady, the big picture. How did you how did you find your place in the world? Anything else you want to add on sort of those pieces before we get into the day to day, the nitty gritty?
Yeah, no, I feel like those were some of the big areas where, I felt like my career path has gotten me to this point, and just doing the work to also, alongside of that.
Nice. And hang tight, audience members. We'll do questions from you all in a little bit, but I'm going to do sometimes these are rapid fire, sometimes it takes more conversation. But this is a three-part question next, which is sort of getting at, I think there's of course, the aligning with interest and values in a career is really important. And then there's also like, what do you do day to day is really important. So, this next sort of set of questions is like, what is that day to day like? What's the work-life balance kind of thing? So, my three-part question is, how much time do you spend at a computer? How much time do you spend on the road? And how much time do you spend outdoors in your position?
Yeah, well, the majority of the time is definitely in front of the computer, because that's related to, meetings that I'll take that are internal meetings, or meetings with grantees or prospective grantees, or webinars, just to gain information. So there's those Zoom meetings that occur. I think there's also a lot of reading and research that occurs as well on the computer. So I'm doing a lot of that, and then with our grant making process, that also involves a lot of software. Um, again, you're spending a lot of the time in front of the computer. After that, on the road, I do quite a bit of traveling as well. Because this foundation is based in San Francisco, and I'm in Albuquerque. I am required to come up here, once a month. So I travel to this area, and then I'm also on a national funders board, and so that also has meeting locations around the U.S. where I'll travel to as well. And then there are various conferences, right, that occur, like Regenerate Conference, which is pretty amazing, sometimes in Denver and sometimes in New Mexico. And so we'll attend these places as well to interact with partners, but also producers, policymakers, and really just trying to stay informed on what's happening on federal, state level policies, but also on the ground too with community members and what they're experiencing. And then outdoors, I think that's more of like a personal time that I try to incorporate, whether I'm traveling or whether I'm at home. I love running, so I spend a lot of my mornings going outside and going for a run or go hiking. I can in the afternoon go to the foothills. Um, but I would like to see more of these, farm ranch visits, which do sometimes occur with conferences. So that does get me out on the ground to experience those. Or also even just site visits as well with particular partners that we have in our portfolio and get to learn more about a project specific. So those are always fun when we get to do these learning journeys.
But that's such a good point. Like sometimes those conference trips, as long as you can tack on a day to go on a hike in a totally new place, it can be such a nice perk. Um, even if you have to travel, and you're in a conference for most of the time, sometimes those walks outside are great.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um, what kind of vacations do you get to take and what flexibility is there? Or what else is important to you about work-life balance? Not everyone
Mhm.
cares about vacations. So,
Yeah, I mean, I love to travel, and I think that's kind of what has also drawn me to this sort of this job is because there's that, once a month travel to San Francisco. So there's a bit of, I don't know, that kind of to me it feels a little bit like a vacation too, but I know it's work. But it's like, okay, but I do get to go and partake in some activities outside of the work hours. And, but I do like to go to our national parks. I love to be outdoors. Over the winter, traveled up to Moab, right, to go see arches and, had this beautiful hike to Delicate Arch. And it was a cold, foggy morning and you come around that bend and you see the arch there in just this misty fog. It was just magical and it was quiet and it was beautiful. Sun was rising. And so, those are the types of vacations that I really enjoy where it's, you can just take time to, enjoy the nature that we have. And you know, I think it's really important to find that work-life balance. And I really appreciate, the places where I've worked that has created same benefits and same understanding of respecting, your life and things that come up and can respond and adapt to that. And so, I have a very generous calendar with lots of holidays and time off. And so it's I feel like I'm in a pretty good place that allows me like my employer allows me that time to, you know, um focus on myself, but also focus on my families and other things outside of work.
that's great. And I know there's growing research about how much more effective we are in our jobs when we actually have time to rest. So, um, unfortunately, not every position has that, but when you can find it,
Yeah.
it's definitely a benefit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and just one other thought I was thinking about too is, for time off, I like to take time off for balloon fiesta, right? Because I enjoy being a volunteer during that time and helping out set up tear down, and just being part of that process and creating experiences for all the people who get to come and enjoy that.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you like ride around in the back of the truck?
Oh yeah, part of the chase crew, absolutely. Just don't.
I've never done it. I'm like, I grew up in this city my whole life and I've never been on a chase crew. I feel like I don't actually have like my Burkina star yet. Like,
Yeah.
gotta get that one these days.
Yeah, you gotta do it at least once,
I know. I'm like, all right, gotta get my head in the game here. Get it together, Eva. Um, all right. With a hard pivot, what do you not like about your job?
Yeah, this is what I don't like about my job is having difficult conversations with organizations about money.
Mm.
Because when organizations will especially now, right? We have this administration that is freezing a lot of federal funds, that is cutting a lot of resources for nonprofits and local governments. Um, Organizations are turning to philanthropy and aren't asking for additional support to maybe fill in some of these losses. And so having these conversations that um, that maybe it's we don't align with your priorities, or we don't have the funds to support, to provide that. There was a statistic out there that says that philanthropy would need to provide that on their annual giving would need to increase it by 282% in order to meet the gap that's occurring. And so, so those are, I think, the really challenging conversations to have that I don't like having. But also, but it's a necessary conversation, that needs to occur.
Oh, that sounds really rough. Yeah, because you know that other people's livelihoods can be on the line and that, whoever they're serving, yeah. Um, that sounds really tough. Yes.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
of course, being on the other side of that, I'm like, yep, those are tough conversations on our end too.
right,
Yeah,
right, right.
it's definitely tough. Yeah. And also, uh, well, at least on my end, it can be really empowering, in sort of normal circumstances to get to like work with a funder and like and bring people in to the work or the effort or anything like that. So it's like in this situation, it's a really tough conversation. And my guess is in other times, it's actually pretty interesting to um, get to have similar conversations. You're like, oh, that's a really cool idea. It doesn't align with us, but you should go talk to this other foundation because I happen to know that foundations also do that, which we all appreciate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And even though there might be, yeah, some of this redirecting that needs to occur, like it's still, uh, my approach is still coming from like a place of like I want to help, so let's try to find some of these resources that you need, or expand your network, expand your community, to get to where you need.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's there's like the creative process or problem solving in that. It's just all hitting at once with everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you get to do on your favorite days?
Um, so I mentioned running. I enjoy doing that. Oh, this is about in the workday. Okay. Well, in my favorite day.
I didn't specify, so you
Okay.
can take it however
Okay.
you want.
Well, I think about, when I go to bed, I'm like, today was a good day, right? It usually involves some sort of physical activity. So it's like, yeah, I went for a run, or I went for a hike, or I did some yoga, right? And then had really good conversations, especially when you have that conversation where it's like, something clicks and you're like, yes, like either I learned something or we've figured something out, right? And so you're satisfied. And then I think, great conversations that also occur. And then I think it's centered around maybe food as well, right? You've got like, I mean, I think that's part of also why we're all into agriculture is because, we all consume and we all eat and we really enjoy good food. And so um, tying that back into like the restaurant where I used to work at as well, right? Like, so finding a really flavorful meal that just satisfies all your taste buds and I think those are all favorite things that I get to, that I enjoy, that bring me joy.
That's awesome. And it's probably nice knowing that even however indirectly, if you're getting to enjoy some local dish made from a local chef that was sourced from a ranch, that probably indirectly you had some role in that all happening,
Yeah,
or enabling that to continue, I guess is the other side of it.
yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right, this is my last question for now, and then we'll turn it over to the audience. If you were going to hire someone to help you in your work, what would you look for in an applicant?
Hmm. Well, I'm a bit on the lower level of hiring people, but if I could, I think that somebody would need to be optimistic, right? Because we're trying to address a global crisis and the cards are stacked against us. So it's like, but coming in with that optimism of being like, yeah, we put one foot in front of the other and we can, make some efforts in doing that. I think that would be, the one of the biggest things. Um, I also think that, just having somebody that's also who understands the work. I think somebody who understands, agriculture or understands, these rural communities that need support. So who can just bring that perspective, right? To bringing that perspective to the table to to try to understand and find those solutions too. I think those are really important aspects. And then, I think being a good person generally, right? I think we want to be surrounded by um, likable people and people who, yeah, who are passionate about working.
Yeah, that's such a great point of bringing of yeah of well, I think it's useful for students to hear like it's not necessarily the courses that you took or anything like that. It's like, can you see a vision in the face of what's going on? I think that's a really interesting point. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I you learn the work as you go, right? Because I think about this when I'm like, going back to law school, right? Like as I mentioned, I studied natural resources and Indian law. Got these certificates because that's where I wanted to go eventually. Um, but when it came down to it, it's like I really, you learn hands like when you do the work. That's where you really gain that experience and that knowledge. So, coursework is important. Absolutely, builds that foundation that'll get you there. But you begin to um, narrow in and focus, hone in on that specialty once you actually start applying that work.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Right? You should not expect to be able to do the job the first day. Like you should expect your employer to like bring you up to speed,
Yeah.
which yeah,
Yeah,
and bring you in.
exactly. And I think that's part of the, employer's role too, is to help, you know, provide that training and to provide that exposure to get them up to speed. And I think what's also neat too about philanthropy is that um, even though I've got this foundation from academia, right? Like I learn the most when I'm on the ranch with a rancher who's talking about how they manage their livestock, who's talking about maybe their finances, who's talking about their business, right? Like I learn the most when I'm engaged there. Um, and so it's just we're all learning and teaching each other. I mean, we're all doing this together.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. It's like we bring our skill sets and then come together. We don't expect to know everything. Yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
very cool. Well, thank you. That's my questions. I will stop recording.